All right, let's dive into one of the most powerful passages in the entire Bible, Psalm 91. It's often called the Psalm of Divine Protection. But what does that actually mean for us, right here, right now? In this explainer, we're going to go way beyond just reading the words on a page. We're going to figure out how to pray them, how to live them with real power and understanding.
So just think about this for a second. What if you had a literal blueprint for divine protection? A kind of spiritual roadmap for navigating all the crazy challenges of life, not just the ones you can see, but all the hidden ones too. Well, that's exactly what Psalm 91 offers. Let's see how.
This psalm is just jam-packed with these incredible promises, but this one gets right to the heart of it. He hath given his angels charge over thee. Just let that sink in. It speaks of this incredible comfort, this immense power, and the profound reality that you are being watched over. This is the big idea we're exploring today, the promise of angelic protection. Okay, let's get right to the source itself. We're going to be looking at the classic Douay-Rheims translation. And as we go through it, I want you to keep an eye out for a few key words that just keep popping up: refuge, wings, and trust. These aren't just pretty, poetic words. They are powerful invitations to a much deeper, personal connection with God. To really get the full power of this psalm, we have to kind of step back in time. It was written for people who were facing very real, very physical dangers. But it also speaks to something much deeper, something we all face, our spiritual battles. Let's dig into that connection. And here's the key to unlocking it all. Those ancient threats you read about in the psalm, the things that would have terrified people thousands of years ago, they're actually perfect metaphors for the spiritual struggles we're dealing with right now. Sure, the scenery has changed, but the battle for our hearts and souls, that's absolutely timeless. So let's break down some of these symbols. When the psalm talks about a lion, it's pointing to pride, that aggressive I'm in charge impulse. The asp or the serpent, well, that represents those hidden venomous sins that can poison us from the inside. The dragon, that's a pretty clear symbol for demonic forces. But then you got this really fascinating phrase, the noonday devil. It's this powerful image for that sudden spiritual fear or anxiety. That feeling of dread or burnout that can hit you out of nowhere, even on a perfectly bright day. And if we look at the original language, the meaning gets even richer. Shaddai is the Hebrew word for almighty. It's all about God's absolute, unstoppable power. Makseh is Hebrew for refuge, but think of it more like a fortress, a place of total safety. And the Latin qui habitat means he who dwells. And this is so important. It tells us this protection isn't for a casual visitor. It's for the one who makes their home in God's presence. Now, Psalm 91 doesn't just stand on its own, not at all. It's actually part of a much bigger story that's woven through the entire Bible. You can see its themes and its promises popping up everywhere, from the Old Testament all the way to a really crucial moment in the life of Jesus. See, this idea of angelic protection isn't a one-off thing. Take a look at Psalm 34, for example. It says, "The angel of the Lord shall encamp round about them that fear him." It's this consistent, beautiful promise you see all through the scriptures. God provides a divine guard for those who are faithful to him. And this is where the story gets really dramatic. Fast forward to the New Testament. Jesus is in the desert, and he's being tempted. And who is it that quotes Psalm 91 right back at him? Satan himself. I mean, wow. That tells you just how powerful these words are. They literally became a weapon in the ultimate spiritual showdown between good and evil. And the connections, they just keep going. That image in Psalm 91 of being covered by God's wings, that's echoed in Deuteronomy, where it talks about God protecting his people like an eagle sheltering its young. And then you have Christ's promise in the Gospel of Luke, giving his disciples authority to tread on serpents. That's a direct fulfillment of the Psalm's promise of victory over evil. It all ties together. So, we've looked at the text itself, and we've seen how it connects throughout the Bible. But what about the church? How does the Catholic Church officially interpret and use this incredibly powerful psalm? Well, the guidance is right there in its teachings, its theology, and its daily prayer life. The Church's teaching on this couldn't be more direct. If you look at the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 336, it says that from the moment we are born to the moment we die, our life is surrounded by the care and prayer of angels. It even says, and this is amazing, beside each believer stands an angel as protector and shepherd. So, this teaching really stands on three pillars. First, you have the Catechism, which we just saw, flat out affirming the reality of guardian angels.
Second, theology helps us understand what this means. It reveals God as our fatherly protector. And third, and this is where it gets really practical, it's put into practice in the liturgy. The church prays this psalm during Lent, the great season of spiritual warfare, and it's prayed every single night in Compline or night prayer. I mean, think about that. It's the very last prayer of the day, when we're entrusting ourselves to God's care through the darkness, and this is the psalm the church chooses.
And listen, this isn't some new idea. It has incredibly deep roots in our tradition. St. Augustine saw this psalm as basically a field guide for our spiritual battles. St. Jerome, the guy who translated the whole Bible, insisted that, yes, angels are literally assigned to protect us. And the great St. Thomas Aquinas taught that this protection covers everything, both our spiritual and our bodily well-being.
Okay, so we've covered the history, the language, the theology, but the whole point of this is to bring it into our own lives, right? So how do we take these ancient, powerful words and make them our personal refuge today, in 2024?
So let's make this really personal. How can this psalm become your refuge? I really want you to think about that. How can you take these promises of protection and apply them to the very specific things you're facing in your life right now?
A great way to start is just to notice how the Psalm's themes are already woven into prayers you might be familiar with. The whole theme of spiritual battle, that connects directly to the sorrowful mysteries of the Rosary, especially the agony in the garden. The Psalm's constant call to trust, that's at the very heart of the Stations of the Cross. And hey, even popes have turned to Psalm 91 in times of global crises, which just shows you how relevant it always is.
Because in the end, this is about so much more than just studying a text. It's about prayer. This simple prayer right here is a perfect place to start. It's an invitation to God to help you see Psalm 91 not just as a beautiful old poem, but as a living, breathing, powerful guide for your life, a real path to the faith, hope, and love that I think we're all searching for.